So welcome everyone. I was going to say good morning, but I think we're all across the country. So it's good morning, good afternoon to everyone. I'm so delighted with the number of people who have joined the call today. I'm Jan Fox. I'm the co-chair of the Canadian Municipal Network on Crime Prevention, and also the co-chair of the Building Capacity in a Rural Crime Prevention Project. Along here with me is my co-chair, Jean Boda, who's going to speak in just a moment. So on behalf of the Canadian Municipal Network on Crime Prevention, I'm really happy to welcome you to this webinar on crime prevention and community safety in a rural context. And to my knowledge, it's the first one of its kind. This webinar is part of a broader project on rural crime prevention that's being implemented in Alberta. And you're going to hear lots more about that in a few minutes. You're going to hear that from the funder, from Jean, and from some of the pilot sites. So, but before we actually begin, it's my honor to respectfully acknowledge that I am joining you from Edmonton, Alberta, which is Treaty 6 territory, traditional lands of First Nations and Métis people. For non-Indigenous people, land acknowledgement is a powerful way of showing respect and honoring Indigenous people. It's one small step towards reconciliation and one small step towards resisting erasing rich Indigenous history and honoring the truth. We are all treaty people. So before we get started on the meat of the webinar, I'm going to just take a couple of minutes to give you a bit of background information on the Canadian Municipal Network on Crime Prevention. So Audrey has put up a slide. Thank you for that. As you can see, our mission and our vision are on the screen. We are a membership-based nonprofit organization that serves as a community of practice focused on supporting communities to prevent crime, increase community safety, and reduce violence. In order to achieve this, CMNCP promotes an often municipality or community-led, multi-sectoral approach that includes a full range of preventative measures and involves key sectors. And some of the key sectors we work very closely with are education, health and social services, child welfare, housing authorities, Indigenous organizations, and of course, enforcement, just to name a few. And I think that a couple of our pilot projects will specifically talk about some of the partnerships and the tables that they've set up as a result of this pilot. Of importance in our work is the fact that prevention and community safety are not imagined as only a policing issue, but as a collective responsibility, including multi-sectoral partners. We really believe it's about a balance between enforcement and prevention. So here's who we are. We've seen a steady increase in membership. Today, we represent over 80 communities and 50% of the Canadian population. So that's pretty significant. We recognize that we had specifically spent a lot of time talking just about municipalities, and we're really now looking at the issues because we know there's a lot of issues related to rural crime, and that's what this is about today. So some of the things, sorry, Audrey, I went off script a bit there. So here's, as Audrey's got up there, what we can provide. So really the core of our work is facilitating opportunities for communities across Canada to share their practice or their best practices. And I think that's one of the strongest parts of the network, and that's what members report to us is the networking that we do. We're also gained a lot of strength in providing training across the country in crime prevention and community safety, and of course now in rural crime prevention. And some of that training is around helping you build a plan that's right for your municipality or your rural area. We also regularly provide webinars on topics of interest, such as this one today. We've also done webinars on use of data and indicators, on CPTED and safe growth, on very specific programs that members have wanted to know more about in different cities, so that we know that a lot of our municipalities share the same social problems and issues, and so we can help one another and learn from each other. And of course, this one that we're doing here today. We regularly create tools and documents, such as action briefs. These have been really popular amongst our members. Action briefs for elected officials, for example, on why it's important to have a community safety plan, or the importance of data in crime prevention, effective crime prevention for municipalities, and just the importance of the support from our elected officials, as well as how important it is to have a dedicated role within a municipality for crime prevention, a dedicated center of responsibility. We've done practice briefs for crime prevention practitioners, including cross-sectoral collaboration. So we've done a number of topic summaries on many different ones. I won't get into all of them, but some examples have been indicators on community safety and community safety and well-being surveys. Sometimes we work closely with communities to help them develop their own community safety plans. So partnerships and collaborations, you can see it's beyond just our members. We have partnerships with Public Safety Canada, the Office of the Federal Ombudsman, and many of them are joint funding partners as well. And over the years, we've had opportunity to partner with many of them, as you can see up there. We've done community safety plans in places like Williams Lake. We've worked closely with our partners at the Alberta Community Crime Prevention Association. Jean represents them as well as their chair. So very closely connected, both nationally and internationally. We're really proud of that. And that work is, I might say, continued despite COVID. So anyone who might be interested in joining, so this is our shameless plug. Our marketing, we really hope that you would consider joining. We're happy. I'm not only the co-chair, but of course a member. And so we're happy to connect you with other members so that they can tell you from their own experience what they've gotten out of being members. But we're always looking for new Canadian communities and organizations focused on advancing the agenda for crime and violence, for reducing violence, to join us. Membership is open to municipalities, Indigenous governments, and organizations focused on local crime prevention. So if you're interested in exploring this, please don't hesitate to go to our website. So thank you for that. Okay, so on to what you came here for. Well, you can see there we have the Zoom etiquette. Thanks for that, Audrey. By now, I think we're all becoming experts, although there's so many different forums out there. I'm not sure we're all familiar with them. So if you have any issues throughout this, don't hesitate to send a message in the chat. Is Christy staying on too? So she'll be monitoring it along with you, Audrey. So either to Christy Parker or Audrey or myself, we'll be monitoring that chat line. And because there are now 111 of us on this call, it's going to be impossible to introduce everyone. And if you get a second, if you could just, put the name of your organization or your municipality up on your, by your name, that's really helpful so everybody knows who they're speaking to. So I'm going to get on to the presenters today. The webinar today is an introduction only to a rural crime prevention from a multi-sectoral perspective. We are so fortunate that we are funded in this work by the Alberta government. And as part of the Alberta Rural Crime Prevention Project, a number of pilot sites in Alberta are working on developing rural crime prevention plans. Today, you're going to have the opportunity to hear from pilot site representatives and multi-sectoral partners on the importance of upstream holistic approaches to community safety, specifically in rural communities. You will also hear about forthcoming documents and training opportunities related to rural crime prevention. Once each of the presenters has had a chance to speak, there will be an opportunity to ask questions. So I'm going to turn it over first to our funder. We are delighted that there are people from outside of Alberta. We know that the pilot sites are all going to be Alberta focused, but we really think that what we're building is something that can be transferable throughout the country. So hopefully you won't hesitate to ask questions or further follow up about how it might be applicable and where you're to us from. So it's my pleasure to introduce, representing the government of Alberta, Karen Korchinski, who also has been on this journey with us most of the way. She has been sitting as a member of the steering committee and providing great advice and guidance. So Karen, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. First of all, I want to thank the Canadian Municipal Network on Crime Prevention, Reach Edmonton, and ACPA, the Alberta Community Crime Prevention Association, for hosting this webinar. Through our civil forfeiture grant program, the government of Alberta is really pleased to support the Building Capacity in Rural Crime project, which has informed the work you will be hearing about today. Rural crime is definitely a priority issue for Alberta. It has emerged as a great concern for our smaller cities, Indigenous and Métis communities, and municipal districts and counties. The government of Alberta supports in principle community safety and well-being approaches to crime prevention, with the idea of community-led centers of responsibility leading community strategies to address public safety issues. We are so looking forward to seeing the evaluation results from the pilots that are running. We commend the work done today by work done today by those here today who are exploring multi-sectoral approaches to preventing crime. We know, all of us here today, that it is only by working together that we can address the root causes of crime and move towards safer cities, provinces, and our country as a whole. So thank you, and I really look forward to the webinar.
Thank you so much, Karen. Thanks for your ongoing support. And it's always great when you have the funder who's willing to walk along the journey with you, and we can fix problems before they become problems. So thank you so much for that. I also want to, just before I introduce Jean, is to really recognize that our wonderful Audrey Monette, she doesn't always get credit, but she's the person who really pulls these things all together, is managing this project in just an amazing way. And that's not been easy considering COVID. There were lots of things that we had hoped we could accomplish in person that we've had to kind of pivot and pause and do online, but honestly, she hasn't missed a beat. So Audrey, I just want you to know how much we appreciate the work that you do, keeping Jean and I on track. So I'm super happy now to introduce my co-chair, Jean Boda, who, as I alluded to, is also chair of the Alberta Community Crime Prevention Association. And in her day job is a counselor and elected official at Red Deer County. So she and I have had this vision, I don't even want to say how long, for quite a long time. And we are excited to see it actually come to fruition, and really excited to present this webinar to you. So Jean is someone who is just amazing to work with, because she's one of these get it done people. And I don't think I've ever heard her say, no, we can't. And I hope she never does, because that's the thing I love most about working with you, Jean. So I'm going to turn it over to you, my friend. And there you go.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much, Jan. And I was going to say good morning, but I'll say good day. And thank you to everyone who signed up and joined us this morning. My name is Jean Boda, and I am the co-chair of the Building Capacity in Rural Crime Prevention Project with Jan, which has been an amazing journey. I'm also, as she noted, the chair of Alberta Community Crime Prevention Association, and I am a Red Deer County councillor. So that is my day job. As a team, we're very proud of this project due to the rural content, and it's my honor to provide you with an overview of our objectives and activities thus far. I'd also like to put a plug in here on how we can shift the narrative from being reactive to using a preventive approach when it comes to enhancing community safety in rural communities. So why this project? And Audrey, you're going to move the slides. For many of us in rural areas, we knew rural crime issues were a priority for many public agendas. It was common knowledge there was an increase in police reported crime, which gave way to a perception of frustrations, deep disappointment, and feeling not safe by many rural residents. As a result, rural crime and the need for interventions became a priority for many Albertans. And by many, I'm talking about the grassroots, elected officials, law enforcement, justice, and crime prevention groups. All were asking, how can we do things differently? In the meanwhile, many of us, there was continued frustration with the lack of evidence-based data for rural crime. The research found was largely focused on crime in urban centers, resulting in gaps or lack of research and practices for rural issues. Also, there was no community of practice or collaborative models which could be used to plan interventions in rural communities. Jan and I had done a lot of discussions on this, actually, and in 2018, the Canadian Municipal Network on Crime Prevention conducted a community needs assessment survey across Canada. The results showed that 75% of rural communities indicated low or no capacity for assessing community readiness and community needs assessments. Rural communities also noted it would be very helpful to have a comprehensive framework, examples of evidence-based programs, training, and support for addressing community safety at the local level. Based on this, and this combined with the increasing concern around rural crime and the lack of research and knowledge, the idea of piloting a project on building capacity in rural crime prevention was born. So as you can all see, it's a 2-year project that was funded by the government of Alberta, with the funding being awarded in April of 2019. And the proposal involved 4 partners, as Jan noted: the Alberta Community Crime Prevention Association, which I chair, where I provincially represented a board. We also have a lot of municipal elected officials on the board. So there's a lot of heavy lifting that needs to be done at times, and we can direct it through there. Reach Edmonton, their holistic approach to just how they deal with crime and crime prevention, and also the amazing work that Jan and her team have done in Edmonton. The Red Deer Lacombe Rural Crime Watch, Ken and his team have done amazing work in Central Alberta with education sessions, awareness sessions. We've created a lot of really good resources, and it's the eyes and ears to what's going on in the province. The Canadian Municipal Network on Crime Prevention, due to they were our research team, but also their supports and a lot of the webinars that they were able to provide us with. So, next slide. The project aims to develop and implement a model to reduce crime and build capacity among rural communities. But to do this, you must build partnerships between stakeholders and develop a collaborative approach, which will allow communities to improve safety in the long and short term. Now, to achieve these goals, the project included a number of different activities, which we'll kind of go through. First, there was a review of existing literature and frameworks for focusing on rural crime prevention. Overall, 50 documents were reviewed to identify what was being done nationally and internationally with regards to addressing crime and safety in rural areas. Now, based on the results from this review, a rural crime prevention framework was created. And I do need to give kudos to Audrey and her team on this. This is a first in Canada. Folks, this is it. You're looking at it. Or if you haven't looked at it, you need to see this. When they began working on this, I said to Audrey, oh, FCM must have something. The federal government must have something. So I contacted FCM. I also contacted several of our federal MPs, nothing. So I do think we have to be commended, and I commend her for the work she's done on this. This is a framework that guides the rural communities and their partners as they advance their community safety efforts. And it includes a lot of strategies and adapted programs within the framework. Now, the framework is a living document, which has been reviewed and validated by an expert group. And the last validation was done in November of 2019. But the document is constantly being updated and reviewed regularly through the program. Oh, excuse my alarm, my big clock downstairs. Now, the next step of the project was to pick our 5 pilot sites in Alberta. And the sites were selected based on specific criteria: close proximity to large urban centers, isolated or remote rural areas, crime severity, and Indigenous and Métis settlement. And the pilot sites are the village of Bicycle, the city of Wetaskiwin, the town of Athabasca and Athabasca County, Lac-La-Biche County, Kikino Métis settlement, Buffalo Lake Métis settlement, and Beaver Lake Cree Nation. And the last one is the town of Peace River and Northern Sunrise County. Now, some of these pilot sites have joined with their adjoining municipalities or communities, just due to trading areas and movement of people between and services between them. So each pilot site received training on community safety in the rural context in November of 2019. That was a day and a half a session. And then following the training, one-on-one support with each pilot site was organized as they began planning their own multi-sectoral committees when they went home. Now, due to COVID, we were only able to get in 2 one-on-one meetings. We did reconsider doing more later this summer as things we thought were settling down. But that was reconsidered whenever the COVID numbers started to increase. So now we are considering something virtual, just due to the COVID. But in the meantime, every month there is a pilot site, or there is a meeting via Zoom where the pilot site representatives and advisory committee members and our team meet for a knowledge exchange opportunities as well as a check-in. So there's also updates on the progress related to the project implementation provided by each pilot site, where they're at, what support we can give them, and going from there. While there have been delays due to COVID, the implementation of the project in each pilot site is ongoing. And I do commend it's been difficult dealing with all these other things on the side, but I do commend the pilot sites on, making the most of it and getting at the bringing together their local partners to work in a multi-sectoral unit. At the end of this project, the framework and the findings will be shared widely, and with the hopes that rural crime prevention efforts will be scaled up nationally. Now that you know a little bit about the project, let's get back to how we need to shift the narrative. And I'm a big advocate of this. And with our team, it's all about being smart on crime and tough on the causes. Strong evidence has shown that early investments in communities have proven to be more effective in preventing crime and community safety than the standard reactive model of enforcement, courts, and corrections. When addressing the root causes of crime, we also need to offset this with the appropriate supports for those who need them. We must avoid displacing our problems. So often in rural communities, reactive measures will lead to displacing the issue to a neighboring community rather than addressing it or eliminating it altogether. The upstream approach in our rural crime prevention project allows the community to adapt to their local needs, allowing them to better coordinate their efforts with key stakeholders and agencies. It also allows the community stakeholders to assess and identify local priorities and issues within their communities and area. So with that, I hope that our project can have a positive impact on communities in the province, country, beyond our pilot sites. And with that, I would like to hand this over to Heather Leslie with the village of Bicycle. They're one of our pilot sites, and she can provide us with a little bit of background as to what they're doing, how they're organizing, and go from there. And I thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jean. Before you just move on, there was one person who indicated they weren't able to see the slides. Could you send me a message in the chat if that is also something that's happening to you? I think Christy and Audrey, we can get them out to people though that attended the call for sure. So if anybody else is having that trouble, let me know. And keep the comments coming on the chat. I think those will work really well for the question period piece. So over to you, Heather. Thank you.
Hi, thank you, Jean. Thank you, Jan. Hello, everybody. As mentioned, my name is Heather Leslie. I'm the CAO for the village of Bicycle here in Alberta. And I'd like to thank the team for this opportunity to spend a few moments to share our appreciation for being involved in the Rural Crime Prevention Project. We see this as a timely and critical opportunity to be involved and bring representation of people and organizations of our community together to address concerns around crime, but to simultaneously build the capacity for a safe and healthy place for our residents and the visitors to Bicycle. To engage our people from all sectors in a communal effort to keep the village a place where people can live and experience the best that small town life has to offer. Our village is just over 800 people. We're very small. We're located about 75 kilometers northeast of Calgary and about 45 kilometers east of Airdrie, which is a growing city here in Alberta. I think we represent many communities in Alberta and across the country that are becoming ever closer to these expanding larger metropolises. Along with seeing many of our citizens travel to the city to work and socialize, the city's coming to visit us more often. This results in the perception of both positive and negative outcomes, more opportunities, more visitors, and sometimes more crime. While crime is an issue within our village boundaries, we often also hear from our rural neighbors who are farming and ranching in the area about concerns related to theft, damage to property, and overall security concerns. In Bicycle, property theft, vandalism, crimes against person, mental health related calls are often highlighted on the crime statistic reports that we get from the RCMP. What we hope to determine from our participation in this project is to get more information about crimes that aren't reported, the impact of criminal activity that spills over from our close-up proximity to these larger centers, but more than that, to address the general health and well-being of our citizens and businesses. We understand, as Jean mentioned, that the pilot sites were chosen to ensure a variety of size, geographical locations, and considerations of population demographics. The ongoing opportunity that the sites have to collaborate, share observations and ideas through the meetings and communications that we have allow us to tap into the experience of other participants while we build the safe community plan for Bicycle. We're looking forward to sharing our plan with similar sized municipalities, recognizing that each will build their strategy based on their specific needs and their resources that are available. When we were first approached to participate in the project, our village council was more than eager to approve our membership and send me off to the training in November 2019. After building a basic understanding of the project, Bicycle set out a community-wide request asking for individuals from a wide variety of organizations to sit on our committee to build the safe community plan. With the fundamentals and processes provided by the program, but more specifically from hearing from our local participants, we were both confident and excited to build a plan for Bicycle that will not just address current real issues on the ground level, but create a platform that can be followed and adapted to meet any and all concerns related to community safety. One that is structured to evolve with the changing needs and concerns in our area. It's a living document and a living plan and a living committee. We're really proud to have a very diverse representation of community members on our committee that range from municipal staff and council, all levels of enforcement, including the RCMP and our local bylaw, church groups, an organization called Community Links that's there to link resources to people in need, our family community support services group, representation from our business communities, local groups like the Lions, our seniors, sports groups, and our school. All these people have come to the table. We also have a representative who farms in the area to speak and interact from the rural perspective. And it sounds like we might have 40 or more people involved and interacting, but what's really great about this group is that many of the members have cross associations. So there's many hats on the table, but only about 20 people in the room. And we find that a very workable group to start to build this plan and to get things underway. We held our first committee meeting in March 2020. And then we regrouped in November 2020, when we had this really small gap in the whole COVID issue. And even after that really fairly extensive break in communication, the participants we invited to join the committee were back on board for the second meeting. They're ready to hear more about the program and get going. The committee was very quick to agree that simply increasing the number of locks on your doors or the number of police in the area is not the answer to reducing crime. Rather, our focus will be to address any gaps relating to root causes such as mental health, poverty, addictions, family violence, education, racism, recreation, logistics, and any other matter that unveils itself as we take a closer collective look at our community. We feel this is the most effective approach to reduce the risk and impact of crime while ensuring a place where our residents and visitors can feel safe and flourish. In these 2 short meetings, a list of ideas and concerns has already been started. Our committee already shows great enthusiasm to work together collectively to share resources and ideas. Significantly, we're already poised to invite people from our neighboring towns to participate. We understand that combating crime and building safe communities does not happen in a bubble. To close, I just wanted to reiterate that our community considers our involvement in this program to be both a privilege and an opportunity to open channels between all sectors to address issues relating to reduced crime, but more importantly, to ward off potential conflicts and challenges before they trickle down to the costly, seemingly unsurmountable effort to deal with crime and its resulting destruction. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. That was a very powerful presentation. Well done. And both Jean and I can speak to just the amazing work that Heather has done bringing a group together. You guys are a real model for us. It's just spectacular to see how your communities come together and all the different sectors and service groups, the farmer, all of those things. This is really making a difference, Heather. So kudos to you. Jean, did you want to weigh in too?
Oh, that was excellent, Heather. Yeah, you guys, yeah, that little shining star, love it, love it, love it. Thanks very much for that.
Talk about small but mighty, hey?
Yeah.
So terrific. All right. So now, speaking of mighty speakers, I'm really happy to have Peter Tufik, who has been a friend on this project all along the way since the outset too, from the RCMP. Powerful voice when it comes to speaking to the importance of not relying just on policing as the answer, and someone who was instrumental in helping us choose the pilot sites because of all the variety that we wanted to get, and someone who's well known in K Division of the RCMP as a real champion for this community safety and rural crime work too. So thanks, Peter. I know how busy you are. We're just so glad you could be with us today.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. And if I can just say, the work that the committee is doing is outstanding. And, if I can take a minute just to shout out the work you and Jean have been doing and all the volunteers and in all of the communities. It's a team effort and it's outstanding work that's happening. So thanks for your leadership. The RCMP is a big supporter, obviously, of this project. I think it is about that collaboration. I'm going to talk in a little bit about our strategy, but really at the core of what we're talking about is that engagement and dialogue between communities and the police to talk about what the issues are and how each of us from different standpoints can help address the crime issues that we have. Kind of collectively. And I think the work of this committee really kind of highlights that. And I'm going to talk about one of the pillars being community engagement. And really, this is a really good example of, how we're able to do that community engagement and through this committee access some of those groups and some great work around crime reduction. So for those outside the province of Alberta, the RCMP is the provincial police in Alberta. So we are responsible for delivering police services in rural Alberta, which I know is the focus kind of today. One of the priorities for the Alberta RCMP is community engagement. It comes right from our commanding officer. All of our detachment commanders have been told that's a priority and that we want them engaging with people in the communities around crime and that discussion around not only what are the police doing, but what kind of information can we help provide to help people better understand the crime that's happening in their area and take steps to prevent it. Along those lines, we have a data and innovation page, which we've put up for the Alberta RCMP, which has our all the crime stats for every community. So people in their communities can go onto that page, look up their detachment, see, selected crime types that we've put up there. So they have an awareness of what's kind of happening in their area. Soon to come on that page, we had a little bit of a setback due to some of what we're dealing with COVID, but part of what we're looking to put on that page too are what the detachment's policing priorities are, and those are set in consultation with the community, so people can kind of see, what is it that their detachment is focused on based on those consultations. Also, we have our public-facing crime map. which is accessible. We have it hosted not only with Crime Stoppers, but with some of the communities here in Alberta that gives people a kind of snapshot of what's happening in their area and around them, and gives good local awareness, I think, for, again, that engagement and dialogue. So, taking both the statistics and looking at, the reported crime, we'll call it, as well as looking at what's available on the crime map itself. And Audrey, I haven't got to the slides yet, if that's what you're trying to navigate to. So it's just me talking. We'll get to the slides in a minute, but it's those two things of both the stats and the data of the police reported crime and what's happening. I think that helps us get that dialogue and engagement and start, enables people to ask, good questions around the crime that's happening, and kind of makes it incumbent on us to make sure we have good answers about the kinds of things that we're doing from a policing perspective. I'm going to today give you an overview of kind of the crime reduction strategy. I know I don't have long to talk, so it'll be pretty high level, and some of the initiatives we have going on. And then if there's time left, I'm hoping I'll have some time at the end. We have a project we're starting up called Data to Action, which I've presented to a couple of the members on the steering committee already, and we're looking on how we can better engage the communities with Data to Action, and working up some information so that, again, focusing on that collaboration, engagement, talk about how each of us can kind of approach that from the space that we're coming from. But anyway, we'll start with an overview of the strategy to give everybody kind of a snapshot so we're on the same page as to how we've been approaching crime here. So on the first slide there. Next slide, sorry, Audrey. Oh, there we go. Yeah, there we go. So really, there's 4 pillars. It's kind of the inner ring of that. You see suppression, apprehension, offender management, and targeted prevention. I'm going to go over each of those really briefly. And at the core of our crime reduction strategy really is data and intelligence. So looking at the information that we have available and trying to figure out how to present that information in a way that's meaningful right now for our frontline, and some of that through our data and innovation page for people in communities, but eventually we want to have a package we can give communities so they can have a good understanding of the crime and crime trends. That's one of the things we're working on. Okay, so next step. At the core of the strategy is that data and intelligence. It's about having an evidence-based approach to crime that's happening in Alberta, and really being smart about how we're using our resources and focusing, those resources and efforts where we're having the biggest issues in order to help combat crime. So everything I'm going to talk about today really begins in a place where we're using data and intelligence. So the next thing that I have is kind of a bit of an overview of kind of how we get there. So, starting with kind of a strategic level, look at, what are the trends that are happening, what kind of crime's happening, where is it happening, when is it happening, the kind of big data approach to looking at the province. The next level is really a tactical analysis of, who's involved in the crime, why are the crimes occurring, what kinds of crimes are occurring, and recommendations around, things that we as a police can do to help kind of combat that. And in some cases, even the underlying causes that contribute to that crime. And then lastly, we have, regular police officers, regular members that are out developing gaps, where we have gaps in information, developing information that fills in those gaps and helps us get a better understanding of what's happening. And then all of that sort of drives where, where the crime's occurring, where we need to be doing patrols or, having greater visibility, the priority offenders, who are the people committing the crime in those areas. We coordinate with our partners, both law enforcement partners. So here in the province, we have a number of law enforcement agencies, from Fish and Wildlife to sheriffs, commercial vehicle inspectors, and we share some of that information around where break and enters are happening to get kind of enhanced presence from those agencies, as well as our citizen-led groups. Citizens on Patrol and Rural Crime Watch, will help us with enhanced vigilance or patrols in some of those areas as well. And then all of that also drives public engagement and the information we get out to the public around what they can do to help keep themselves safe. Okay, so next one. Just to give some context, because I think this is important to when I'm talking about priority offenders, what I mean. So, we looked at the top 25 offenders from the 4 districts, Alberta is split into 4 districts, so top 25 in each district. And the top 100 offenders represented 4,000 calls for service, 14,000, almost 15,000 hours of police work, and had a combined crime severity index score. And just for reference, that's what Maclean's magazine uses to rank communities in terms of community safety. That information comes from StatsCan. So when you look at the offenses those offenders were committing, and you take the weight that StatsCan would assign to those offenses, they had a combined score of over 300,000, which, is, to put that in perspective, before you kind of divide for population and other things, that's all of the crime in Airdrie, all the crime in Wetaskiwin or Leduc. So it kind of gives you an idea of the kind of crime impact those top 100 offenders alone are having in the province. Now, we have 2 prongs when we're talking about offenders. The first prong is apprehension. So, one of the colleagues I work with from our Justice and Solicitor General likes to say, as police, we don't apologize for enforcement. It's part of what we have to do. I recognize it's a disruption strategy. But the other side of that is offender management, where we actually look at what are the things that are driving that offender's behavior and how can we help to start address those. So I'm going to first talk about the apprehension strategy, that enforcement parts. That's the next slide. There we go. We provide information and reports to all of the detachments around who those people that are having the greatest crime impact in their area are. That comes from the big division-wide lens, so we're able to see those multi-jurisdictional offenders that might be living in a particular place and doing crime in a number of communities. As an example, one of the offenders that we sort of identified through this strategy was committing offenses in all 4 districts across 12 different detachments. And it was only really by looking at that whole approach to the province and all the offenses that had been committed that we're able to identify that offender and the crime impact that he was having across the province. So, all the detachments get that information. We also have 4 dedicated crime reduction units. Often when I'm doing public engagements, I describe them as kind of dog the bounty hunter. They're out there looking for those priority offenders that are having the biggest crime impact. Sometimes those offenders have warrants for their arrest, which we'll prioritize, and the units will affect those arrests. And sometimes they'll actually follow them around and watch them commit an offense and then apprehend them afterwards. For the farmers in the audience, I apologize. I know my boss hates this slide because the police cars are in the middle of the field, but I was trying to get across just the lengths that we'll go to get the offender. Anyway, we'll go on to the next slide. This is about offender management. I talked about this as it's really collaborative between us and social service agencies, health agencies like addictions, and it's bringing together those 3 areas to start to address what's driving that offender's behavior. So in Alberta, we've been running evolutions of this program in cooperation with Justice and Solicitor General over the last decade. It's been studied a number of times, and the latest iteration we have of the Integrated Offender Management Program, which we do, Calgary Police Service, Edmonton Police Service, and Justice Solicitor General do together. They studied the work we were doing with offenders, and there's roughly a 36% reduction in recidivism with the offenders that choose to work with us, meaning, where it's usually multiple issues, but drug addiction issues, we're working obviously with addictions, sometimes employment, sometimes income support, housing, in order to stabilize them and get them out of crisis. And oftentimes that leads to getting them out of a cycle of crime. By looking at the same people that are the priority offenders in the province and focusing that work on them, we're able to get them out of that crime cycle and really have a good impact on reducing crime in the province. Okay, next, I've got targeted prevention. So direct engagement, that's that engagement pillar I was talking about. That's, I think, really important, kind of where the work of this community, I think, really fits in. I was taking a look at a particular community and what is the impact there and what are the things that we can do in cooperation with the community to help decrease crime. So on the slide here in the bottom right-hand corner, that's a lock it or lose it event. So members of the community who are part of Citizens on Patrol partnered with the RCMP, and they actually go out and look for vehicles that are insecure or where people have left their valuables in vehicles, in areas where we're having a lot of theft from vehicle or theft of vehicle. And by doing an awareness campaign that's sort of targeted in that area, we draw hopefully awareness to the community to help reduce crime in that area. Okay, next. It is about you know, getting our members out on the road to be able to conduct those patrols that we know have a disruptive effect on crime. So we have to identify the areas where the crime is happening. I talked about, you know, how we kind of do that a little bit through our data and intelligence, but then it's a matter of getting those members actually out on the road and into those areas where the crime's occurring. So to do that, we really have to try and reduce the administrative burden that they have. So we have 2 units that we've created in order to help support that. The first unit is the PROS Data Center. So the members, rather than having to return to the office, I usually call it, you know, elastic band policing. You go out to a call, back to the office, do the report, out to a call, back to the office, do the report. They're able to stay out on the road, phone into the PROS Data Center, actually dictate their report to a civilian who will actually collect all the information, create the file, do all the entities, all the linkages, put all the information together, and then send it simply to the constable to review and acknowledge that all the information is actually correct and accurate. It takes the member about 2 to 3 minutes to dictate the file. And then and they're able to stay out on the road while they're doing that, and then engage proactively in patrols. The other unit is the callback unit. So these are members who are often on restricted duties and aren't able to be out on the road due to often medical restrictions. And so these are trained police officers, experienced police officers. And so for our low priority calls, they're able to engage with the people on the call, and if there's and assess whether or not there's evidence to be gained, or if we need to send a member out to do some further follow-up, collect evidence, do or call out some of our specialized units. And if there's nothing required, in other words, you know, a good example of that is some garden tools that are left out in the front yard and they're taken. Nobody saw anything. There's no witnesses to the crime. There's no video surveillance to collect. You know, in the past, we'd send a member out there. They could go and look and say, yep, it's stolen. But there's nothing for them to collect. In this case, an experienced police officer can run through that set of facts with the homeowner. And if in fact there's no further evidence to collect, they'll write up the file, collect the information, which is great for us because then we have that data to rely on to kind of guide our patrols, and it keeps our frontline members free to continue doing work. So combined, those 2 units, PROS Data Center and the callback unit, saved our frontline 37,000 hours last year, which means that's 37,000 hours that those frontline members are actually able to be out in the community and engaged. Okay, so how am I doing for time?
Can we wrap up in about 3-ish minutes, 3 to 5?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, I can. So I'll talk about kind of how we bring all these together. And this is, you know, we've been doing this for about a year, and this is the part where I was talking about, you know, we're now looking at how do we start to use this information and can we engage the community through this? And it's called data to action. So data to action is really, you know, it's our, I'll call it accountability framework for making sure that all the aspects that I'm talking about are being done. Up till now, we've been working and we've selected one really crime impacted detachment in each of our 4 districts. And every single month, we have our intelligence analysts look through the information from the files, the intelligence that we have in that area, and really put together a very comprehensive report for the detachment that outlines the crime issues, the crime trends, the kinds of activities that they could undertake as a detachment to help deter that crime. We also bring together all of our operational support from headquarters. That includes our general investigation sections and community policing and auto theft units to support those detachments. The intelligence reports that are developed go out to all of the people that are involved in data to action, and to review and kind of go over, consider what they can do from their unit's perspective. I'm going to talk about outside agencies as well here in a minute. And then really it's problem-oriented policing. How can we help, you know, what can the units do to help solve this problem? And then it's creating tasks from those things that they can contribute, and then following up every single month on those tasks to see that they're actually getting completed, and where we're having roadblocks, getting over the roadblocks. So if we go down, actually 2 slides, Audrey. That one's good. That's what I'm looking for. So really, you know, I've talked a little bit about this. If you look at the people that are involved in the crime, so 10% of victims in Alberta represent roughly 36% of victimization. 10% of the suspects account for 58% of the crime impact. So we talked a little bit about some of the work we can do with victims of crime and suspects, how we kind of focus on that. High risk places, 10% of locations account for 68% of the crime impact. These are places we go back to constantly for calls for service. And then what's driving the CSI? So in Alberta, property crime by far and away is driving the CSI in Alberta and represents about 43% of the total crime impact in Alberta. And where those three come together is really where we put our focus. And then I've listed on the side some of our external partners that we have at the table, in addition to the internal partners I already talked about. And working collaboratively together in those communities is how we you know, are helping to drive down crime. And the next iteration of that will be, how do we start to get the communities involved in those data to action initiatives so that they can have the same understanding of what's going on with crime in those areas. Okay, next one down, just talk a little bit about sorry. Oh yeah, I was just going to give you a quick overview. So these are some of the things we talk about, like when we do one, this is an example from Rocky Mountain House, we look at what are the crimes that are occurring in that area. The next one down. Oh, sorry, that slide ended up out of place. I apologize. It's about bringing together education, prevention, intervention, and enforcement, and putting that all together in order to kind of deliver on the crime reduction strategy. So that's sort of the strategy in a nutshell, and how we're looking to better integrate with our communities. I think I'll stop there, and I can take any questions.
That's perfect. I thank you so much. As usual, a chock full of information in your presentation. Really appreciate it. I see that there's some great comments and questions in the chat line too, and one of your colleagues from policing is on the call. But maybe what we'll do is finish off the presentations and then do questions at the end. I think that's what Audrey was hoping for. Give me the nod if I'm right about that, Audrey. Are you? Good. Okay. Thank you so much, Peter. So I'm going to turn it over now to the mayor of Lac La Biche County, to Omer. He's another one of the pilot site representatives and has been doing some amazing things there too. So hi, nice to see you, Mayor Mugabe.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Did I unmute, or I'm going to now? Can
you are. We can hear you and see you well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Again, I'd like to address, we are on Treaty 6 land. We border Treaty 8 and Treaty 10, and probably the Métis homeland of Alberta. We're not gonna do a fancy slide, so you guys pay attention, okay? So let's be clear. So I have with me Councillor Chuck, which sits on the SMAC committee, which is the Safer Municipalities Advisory Committee, which is has 3 members of council, 3 members of the public, has a staff sergeant on it, and I think that's it for that one, eh?
Yeah,
and the public
CPOs.
and our CPOs. So I'm going to turn it over to Councillor Kachuk. He'll start off. If there are questions about what a specialized municipality, and I'll type it in on the chat, and we'll try to do it in 10 minutes.
Sounds good. We're going to try to keep our physical distance as well. So just want to make sure that you guys can hear me as well. Perfect. So yeah, through the past year and a half, I guess, as we've been on this journey, a few things have changed. I've actually had the pleasure now to sit on the ACPA board with Jean. It's been a pleasure working with that committee, getting some more in-depth knowledge of what's going on throughout Alberta and in a lot of our other rural regions. It's really good to have that network of people to be able to draw information from, share information, share best practices, and you know, sometimes just bounce ideas off of. You know, an idea might seem like it's going to work in one area of the world, but then when you talk to your peers and find out maybe they've done it or done it differently, you can shift focus or maybe put more focus in other areas. So it's been a really good year and a half so far, and looking forward to the rest of the pilot project. I think the mayor and myself today are just going to focus on some of the initiatives that we've been doing within the Lac La Biche region since the inception of the pilot project. One of which, and I think it kind of ties all of our initiatives together, we've actually signed a deal with TELUS to deliver broadband services to our rural area. So we are a specialized municipality within Alberta, and broadband connectivity, as you know, you can probably guess, is an issue for not only Albertans but Canadians in general. So something that we've looked at, delivering broadband services to both of our hamlets as well as our rural communities through cellular connectivity, as well as fiber to the home and fiber to the business. So that's going to allow us to integrate with our emergency alert system, which we've also implemented within the community. But we need people to be able to access those alerts as they come out. As far as connectivity goes, I think it's crucial for everybody to be able to, you know, whether it's call 911 or get that information as a crime's happening in the community.
I'll cut in here a little bit on terms of the crew, if I can, and it's we've had some information on that. We fund 2 enhanced positions and a clerk with our detachment here. Sitting down with the staff sergeant, we change it to a crew committee, and you know, we work closely with Staff Sergeant Nut Brown, Wendell. I'll just use first name Curtis, because I might, if I use a title, I might be promoting them or demoting them. So we'll try to do that. So that really does work. And also they work in the Northeast, and they're tied in with the St. Paul, Bonnyville, Cold Lake, Elk Point, Two Hills. So it's a Northeast region. We find that is really working very well. We also have the lock or lose it, which previously had been brought up. And that's, again, we're working on that. I'll touch on the Indigenous connection in the communities. They are in lockdown right now, but right now we've connected with the Buffalo Lake Métis settlement, Beaver Lake Cree Nation, and the Kikino Métis settlement. Their rural crime is basically the same throughout rural Alberta and probably rural Canada. So that still remains. So if there's any questions, just put it on to the chat. We'll try to answer. Over to you.
Yeah, actually, so I just saw one question pop up in the chat while we were going through. So for those, I guess, that aren't aware, a specialized municipality like Lac-La-Biche, we're actually the county, the old town of Lac-La-Biche and the hamlet of Plamondon have amalgamated. So we have one council, one administration for both the county, the old town of Lac-La-Biche, and the hamlet of Plamondon. So what used to be 3 administrations, 3 councils, has now amalgamated into one. Within those boundaries, we have 3 Métis settlements and 2 First Nations. So we've tied in those partners as well into our pilot projects. Some of the other initiatives that we've really been focusing on since joining in the pilot project was the Safe Place program. So this program is actually one of a kind in Western Canada from what we're aware of. And we've actually tied in with all of our businesses and on our main street in both hamlets to offer a safe place for those in the community that might be victims to crime. So whether that's a hate crime, fear for their safety, these posters are put up on the majority actually of our businesses who have signed up for the program. They were given training to how to deal with certain situations to get these people out of harm's way and provide that safe place to contact the CPOs or community peace officers, or in some situations, the RCMP. We've also integrated that into our CEPDED training with not only our staff, but also offering training for public members as well. And we've been looking at developing a new CEPDED design for our main street. We have to do some major critical infrastructure upgrades within the next year and a half anyways. So we're looking at really integrating those CEPDED designs and getting the public involved. As I'm sure a lot of municipalities have issues, you know, on their main streets or their downtown cores where whether it's homeless people or people just choosing to hang out in the downtown area. We want to make sure that they not only have a place to go that's safe, so tackling that through our homelessness programs, as well as wraparound services, but looking to try and integrate that in a holistic approach versus just shooing people off of the main streets.
Thank you. I'll touch a little bit on our prevention when we're working with we also, our CPO, one is a school resource worker. We work with the FCSS doing programs. So we concentrate on prevention. And as you can see through the chart that was brought up before, we feel that's one of the ways if we can access some of the young people. And that will continue. The other one we do a lot of is in terms of I've been mayor since 2014. I've talked to the Solicitor General, to the K Division. We have a good connection with them. We're advocating some of the things we feel that are the catch and release, as we call it here, for some of the criminals. And that's not really on the enforcement part of it. It's on the legal system. Some of the hardened criminals, or the ones that are not, we send them to jail and they get a good education and come back as pros. Those are the things we want to work on: mental health, rehabilitation. So that's many years ago, because I'm so old, I can tell you we used to have these Métis wilderness camp for low offenders, and they would work in the communities. They became accepted. They became part of the community and moved on and stayed out of jail, stayed out of committing those things. So we'll continue. We advocated with the Solicitor General for more boots on the ground, and everybody knows that's required. When you say specialized municipality, we're 16,000 square kilometers. We have oil and gas, farm, tourism, lumber. So, I mean, there's a lot of things happening all the time. So I'll turn it over to Councillor Kachuk.
Okay. And I think one of the key pieces that we're looking at for future prevention as well is we've integrated a training center into Lac-La-Biche in partnership with our college, Portage College, to help train community peace officers for Alberta. So through a partnership with them and the Solicitor General's office, we're actually offering peace officer training within the community. And we feel just the extra presence that we've had, we offered firearms training and some other trainings, radar detector training within the community so far. Obviously with COVID, it's been kind of a slower start than we would have liked, but just having those extra peace officer vehicles in the community or in the area, we've actually noticed quite a bit of positive influence from the community. And that kind of brings me to that perception of safety. I know we all talk about safety within our communities, and in some communities we may perceive it not to be as safe as others, but in fact crime statistics are lower. Something that we've been working on with our detachment is getting that communicated out to the community as well, that even though they may have a perception that their main street is not safe because there's certain individuals hanging out, or a perception that living in the rural is safe but maybe may not be as safe. Trying to get those pieces of data out to the communities to make sure that people are not either worrying for the wrong reasons or falling into a false sense of security as well. You hear from a lot of people, I've never locked my door out in the rural community, or things like that we definitely want to try and curb those kind of mindsets. And then the last thing that we've really been pushing for is enhanced authorities for our level 1 peace officers. We've been really advocating. We got some good news from the Solicitor General's office just last week that they are looking to help us to deliver training for theft under 5,000, mischief, and training for single-digit and two-digit highways to enhance the authorities of our peace officers. So that's something that hopefully we're going to be able to help deliver for the Solicitor General's office in the near future.
Well, thank you, Lauren. I think we're just about done. I'll wrap up a couple of things in terms of our connection with the Indigenous and the settlements. We consider them part of our community. I know there's borders, but we're their urban center. So we'll continue connecting with them. I want to tell you a little story if I can. Do I have time, Audrey? You're not going to boot me yet? A while back, traveling back from Edmonton, I get a call from CBC saying, how do you deal with an activity in your community? And I says, well, what's going on there? And he says, well, there's a lockdown at the college. There's choppers there. There's dogs there. And so, how do you deal with that? And I just said, for just a second, I says, well, that tells you crooks or thieves are going to come into our community. We're going to bring out choppers, dogs, and whatever we can. And there was silence on the other end of the radio. I said, so I think it's a positive. They didn't call me back. So just to say, we will do whatever we can to try to help our people. And I think that's all we have. Sorry, we don't have that fancy slides that everybody else has, Audrey.
That's absolutely fine, because slides are not always the only thing we have. Thank you so much, Mayor and Councillor. That was really good. And I really appreciated how you highlighted your relationship with the Indigenous community, the Métis settlement. Jean and I have actually seen it firsthand when they've been not in lockdown and you've been in meetings together with them. That relationship is something that I'd love to see the rest of the province model. You guys are doing just phenomenal work out there. And thanks also for talking about the wraparound and all the other people that are engaged in the perceptions of crime, Councillor Touch. That was really important too. So thanks so much. I know we want to get through this, though. It's my pleasure now to introduce Becky Wiley-Jardine, who is with Red Deer College and has also been a member of our steering committee since almost the beginning, or the beginning, maybe, I think. And Becky also has a background in policing, so she has a really important and interesting perspective. So welcome to you, Becky.
Oh, thank you. Can everybody hear me, by the way? My computer went kaput, the power went out and I had to re-sign it back in. So just making sure everything's working.
You are clear as a bell. Thank you very much.
I was panicking a little bit there. So I'm going to try this and make sure that everything works here quickly. And then I have to, all right. Can everybody see the slides?
No, not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Oh. All right. Not any of them, hey?
No.
I think I have to share my screen. That's what.
Yeah, there you go.
All right.
Yeah.
There we go.
It's coming now. There you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So everybody can see?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So I'm going to go back to the first one. Are we on the first one now?
Yeah.
There we go. Okay, so in addition to policing, I'm going to run through this quickly because I know we're getting a little bit behind. I also am the head of the Justice Studies program at Red Deer College, and I was an RCMP officer for 22 years. And plus I have a master's degree in criminology, so kind of combined and all that stuff, and I teach now. So it's really interesting to be able to do these kind of webinars and stuff and have a little bit of information for people. So I'm going to run through.
You want to just start the slideshow, Becky? I think just start your slideshow. Yeah, from the beginning there. There we go. Perfect.
Okay. Are you guys seeing the right one?
We're seeing the first one, and then if you hit
okay, are you seeing like the regular one or presenter?
CMNC. Yeah, we're seeing CMNCP webinar rule crime, the main slide.
Okay, awesome. All right, so I'm going to go through. Jean talked a little bit about the current narratives, right? So I'm going to talk about the current narratives that are going on in Canada right now. So we started out with defunding the police, and where did that come from? It came about from the death of George Floyd in the US and popularized by the Black Lives Matter movement in the US. It supports defunding or divesting funds from police to public safety and community support, such as social and youth services, housing, education, healthcare, and community services, and also supports delegating certain police responsibilities to other organizations. In Canada, the current narrative is more along the lines of reallocating resources. And so the idea became popular in Canada due to the Black Lives Matter, of course, and the movement in the US that came here through the media, because we're exposed to a lot of American media here in Canada. And it also supports reallocating resources, funding police to upstream types of crime prevention, focusing on social issues that can lead to crime. So we've heard everybody before me kind of talking about these upstream types of crime prevention. And so I'm going to focus on that as well. So social issues such as addictions, mental health that police are ill-equipped to deal with need to be better funded. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that as well. So if we look at crime in Canada and we look at what's been done on research in crime in Canada and around the world, it's shown that many crimes are committed by those who are under the influence of alcohol and drugs. And so property-related crime is often committed in order to obtain money to purchase drugs. And we heard Peter Tufik talking about how property crime is really prevalent, particularly here in Alberta. And I think it's pretty much the same across Canada, because if we look here at the property crime trend in Canada, we can look at the total number of crimes, which includes person crimes, and we look at the property crime, which is this blue line here. It's the property crime, and we can see that what's happened on the chart is that the crime rise has occurred during Canada's largest recessions. So we had the biggest one in 81, and we can see that there's a big rise in crime here. We had another one in 1981, which was this one here in 1991, I should say. We had a large rise in crime again in 2008, which was over here. And then again, we had another one in 2014, and we can see that the crime trends are starting to climb again. So when we look at property crime, then a lot of the crime that's happening is drug and alcohol related, because people are, more particularly drug related. People are looking to keep their addictions going. So we look at crime prevention overall. We can look at two different sides. The police initiatives, and these police initiatives are some of the things that Peter Tufik talked about. Usually they're reactive measures. We look at DARE. It was kind of considered proactive, but shown not to be that effective, actually. Looked at crime prevention through environmental design, which is a proactive measure of crime prevention. And we look at that, and that would be some things like target hardening. So putting bars on your windows, putting better locks on your doors, locking up all of your stuff, putting arm bars on your vehicles, that kind of thing to prevent theft. We also Peter also talked about intelligence-led policing, where police take a look at all of their stats. They have criminal analysts that analyze the data, and then they go about looking to implement things like hotspots policing. So if there's issues in certain areas, they'll send more police officers out there during those particular high crime times. Problem-oriented policing, where you take a look at what some communities are having issues in certain areas, and you work with that community to try to fix those problems. And then, of course, the prolific offender units, where we have criminals that are doing 90% of the crimes, and we know that it's only 10% of the population of those criminals that are doing them. And then you focus on them to follow them and catch them when they're in the act and try to get them locked up. Then we look at upstream crime prevention, which is a little bit different. These are more proactive measures. They're more evidence-based. So we want to take programs that have been proven to actually work and implement them into communities. They're people-centered. They focus on people and their issues, focusing on early intervention. So starting when children are really young and focusing on them, trying to stop criminals before they start getting into crime. And we want to avoid harming victims. And so that's the end goal of upstream crime prevention. And then as well, focuses on changing government policy to fund programs for schools, families, health, and social risk areas. So what we know doesn't work to prevent crimes, you always hear, and this is something that politicians want to focus on all the time, is, oh, let's put more boots on the street, more police. And you hear this from the people in the country or wherever across the country saying, yeah, we want more police, more police. Well, more police is not necessarily the answer. And doing random patrols, we know, does not work. There have been a few experiments done where they've actually put more police on the street and tried to do random patrols, but it does not stop the crime. It just kind of pushes it out into a different area, and it doesn't really work. What police are dealing with now are social problems, things like addictions and mental health issues, and they're dealing with them on a daily basis, and they're ill-equipped to deal with those. Building more jails and locking up criminals with addiction and mental health issues is not going to solve our crime problem, because institutionalized criminals with addiction issues will just get turned back out into society with the same addictions, and then they'll continue their cycle of crime. So we know that these kinds of things do not prevent crime. Well, what will help? So things like specialized courts, drug courts, for example, mental health courts, and community treatment centers. And that's one thing I know that as part of the Rural Crime Watch and part of ACPA, when we met with the Justice Minister, probably about a year and a half, almost 2 years ago now, we met with him, and I had mentioned, hey, you know what? We need community treatment centers. We need addiction treatment centers in communities to help treat the people who have these addictions, because that is what's causing a lot of the crime, particularly property crime that's happening in our province right now. Domestic violence courts, so place things like different programs like Homefront Calgary was really instrumental in helping with domestic violence types of incidents and lowering the actual incident of domestic violence in the city of Calgary. Diversion programs we know work really well. And of course, restorative justice programs. Those work well to help prevent crime. So what will work again to prevent crime? Well, crime prevention efforts must be multi-sectoral and should focus on early intervention. So we need to have schools, health services, child and family services, police, social services, and most importantly, the governments to all sit down at the table and work together to come up with solutions to help prevent crime and bring all these parties together to sit at the table to talk about the issues and how to solve them, and for everyone to put funding into it as well. If everyone were to put funding into it, it would really help a lot. It shouldn't all be tasked on police to put funding into this. It should be every one of these agencies should be putting funding into helping get a better community safety plan. This would involve implementing programs that have been proven to reduce crime. So just like I had mentioned before, programs should focus on children, adolescents, and families in order to reduce crime. And we know that research has shown that programs that do that can help to reduce crime. And this is not something that's going to happen overnight. This is a process that's going to take a long time. It could take a generation for this to actually work. But when it does, it will help a lot. And so we need to convince governments that this is the way to go. And it costs less. When we put funding into those types of programs, it actually costs less than it does to put more police on the street. And it has longer lasting effects. So the best start would be to implement a permanent crime reduction board in communities to lead, implement, and help evaluate these programs. Okay, I rushed through it, but hopefully it was good.
Perfect, thanks. Audrey, do you want to finish this up or time for questions? What do you want to do next here?
Yeah, I think I will talk very briefly about the topic summary and then an upcoming training opportunity, and then we'll open it up for discussion for the last couple.
Because we are down to our last 11 or 12 minutes. So.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Thanks, Becky. That was great.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you.
So I'm going to share my screen here. Can everyone see the slides? Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Audrey Manette. I work with the Canadian Municipal Network on Crime Prevention. So I've been lucky, we've talked about it a little bit throughout the presentations today, but I've been really lucky to work with Jean and Jan, the co-chairs of the project, as well as with the pilot site representatives on this rural crime prevention project. And so now that you've heard our speakers talk about some of the objectives and activities of the project and share a bunch of different perspectives on the importance of multi-sectoral efforts to address crime and safety in rural areas, I'm going to, as quickly as possible, because we are in a bit of a time crunch, conclude the presentation portion of the webinar by talking quickly about a specific resource that was developed that captures a lot of that information around kind of that comprehensive and collaborative approach to rural crime prevention. So over the past couple of years, the Canadian Municipal Network on Crime Prevention has developed and published a number of topic summaries, which are essentially user-friendly resources that outline a bunch of information, evidence, promising practices pertaining to specific crime prevention and community safety topics. And so as part of the Building Capacity in Rural Crime Prevention project, CMNCP developed a specific topic summary on rural crime prevention. So we really see this document as a good resource to increase conversations across the country on how to best prevent crime, specifically in the rural context. So the document was actually attached to the calendar invite and sent in an email. And it's also available on CMNCP's website, and I'll throw the link in the chat in just a minute here. So as part of my presentation today, I'm just going to present some high-level findings that are included in that topic summary, and then I'll conclude by presenting an upcoming training that may be of interest to some of you on the call today. So very briefly, in terms of some background information, the process of developing the topic summary was really based on a review of literature and documents pertaining to rural crime. So in total, about 50 documents were reviewed, going from academic articles, reports to media articles, just to get a really broad understanding of what's out there, what do we know about rural crime and how to prevent it. It also included a consultation process, and this was mentioned by Jean a bit earlier, with some expert practitioners from across the country. And I do really want to take this time to say a huge thank you to BCRCMP, the International Center for the Prevention of Crime, Kent Regional Service Commission in New Brunswick, as well as Professor Irvin Waller from the University of Ottawa, who did review and provide feedback throughout the process. And so the purpose of the topic summary is really to provide some general guidelines on how to best reduce crime and build capacity in rural communities. So very quickly, in terms of some of the main findings from that review of literature and documents, we found that the types of crime that are more prevalent in rural areas obviously differ compared to those most likely committed in urban areas. So in terms of some of those types of crime that were more prevalent in rural areas, there were things like theft and burglary, which can be explained in part by the lower probability of being caught because there's just less police presence in rural areas. The distance between neighbors, so there's not as many people around that could actually see the person committing the act, as well as the low rates of reporting, so lower probability of being caught. Vehicle theft was also on that list. So just as an example, data from Alberta shows that the rates of vehicle thefts are, I think, 15% higher in rural areas compared to urban areas. Farm and agricultural crimes. So I know that we do have a number of farmers on the call that have been talking in the chat. So this was included, that it was mentioned that, of course, this is something that's very specific to the rural context, and that the approaches to prevent and reduce farm crime have to be very much adapted to that context. Another one was violence. Now, obviously, violence does affect all communities, whether they're rural or not. However, it's important to recognize that the impacts of violence are often exacerbated by things like limited access to support services, transportation barriers, stigma, and so on. And it's also important to recognize that violence against women, and particularly Indigenous women, is higher in the rural context. Through that review, there's also a list of priority areas or more high-level challenges that were identified as being more common in the rural context. The first one had to do with policing, and more specifically police response time. So a lot of people that are victimized in the rural context, I really highlighted that the lengthy police response time that can lead certain people to travel into rural communities to commit crime because they know that the police response is going to be more delayed. The non-reporting of crime, so people feeling like it's too trivial or that they won't get a response, and so they prefer not to actually report the crime. Problems with drugs and alcohol were also mentioned because they're often seen as a source of entertainment that can be related to boredom, stress, isolation, but also because substance use programs and services do tend to be less available for people who live in rural areas. In terms of so repeat offenders, youth issues as well, some of the risk factors around that were exacerbated in rural areas. So I'm going to skip very quickly to the next section of the topic summary, which had to do with comprehensive community safety plans. So for communities to identify what their local issues are and to identify the appropriate crime prevention approaches to be implemented, the most effective approach is to develop a community safety plan. And so a plan like this really allows to mobilize more of the services that can successfully tackle the risk factors So it's really about getting more of those investments upstream and not only focusing on reacting to crime after it has happened. And so that's a four-step process that includes things like conducting a community safety assessment. So looking at data, talking to community members to really get a sense of what the priorities are locally. Developing a plan that outlines some effective approaches to address those priorities, implementing it in the community, and then of course, monitoring and evaluating the outcomes. And I went very fast over the different steps. The topic summary really does a good job at highlighting the different steps and what that can look like in a bit more detail. So if you are interested, I do suggest to refer to the document directly. And so I think the key message or takeaway from the webinar is really that rural crime prevention efforts should be based on the local context. And it's really important to conduct a community safety assessment to generate a good understanding of the priorities, assets, and needs of that rural community. Because we very much do acknowledge that all rural communities are different, their priorities are likely different, as well as their needs. And so by going into those communities and doing that assessment of what priorities are locally, then you're well equipped to select the programs and approaches that are most appropriate. So again, while the topic summary provides general guidelines on preventing rural crimes, ultimately it's best if the rural community kind of goes through that process. So I quickly presented the steps of developing a community safety plan in rural communities. And it's very obvious it is a complex process. It does require strong collaboration at the local level. And so if you are from a rural community and you're interested in learning more about that process of rural crime prevention and community safety planning, I want to quickly introduce a training opportunity that may be of interest. So the rural crime prevention training is developed and led by the Canadian Municipal Network on Crime Prevention. And to my knowledge, I think is one of the first trainings that really focuses on rural crime prevention from that multi-sectoral perspective. So the 12-hour training is going to be delivered over 3 half days on January 18th, 25th, and February 1st. And the modules include every single step of the community safety planning process. So, things like how to assess challenges in my community, mapping what our assets are, analyzing data, identifying, potential evidence-based programs. And each participant will receive a certificate after completing the training. And so for those communities that would like to join, the training costs $250 per community, and that allows for 2 representatives to attend the training. And registration is done through Eventbrite. So I will share the link to the Eventbrite in the chat. We'll also send a follow-up email that has all that information. So I really recommend, if you're interested, to look at the topic summary, kind of get a better sense of what that training, the planning process can look like. And then if you're interested in learning more, feel free to reach out or to sign up for the training. And on that note, I will hand it back over to you, Jen.
Sure. Thank you, Audrey. I'm sorry you were rushed because that's really, really important information. But the training, please take note of that training. I think that that would be really valuable use of your time.